You guys just don't mind us. Okay, good. We're good. Vicky actually says, really, seriously, don't mind us.
Yeah, don't mind me.
All right, Vicky, you're going to do the first. Hey, Vicky loves talking in front of people. So Vicky is going to give us our first announcement, which is?
Hype movie night. Dress as your dream job.
Ooh, Superman. Is that a job? I guess that's a job. Who, teens, who's coming dressed as Pastor Jared and Pastor Chase to this? Jesse? Okay, good, yeah. So youth movie night. They need to be here at the church at 5, right?
We'll let them know the movie times.
Okay.
Doolittle.
They're going to go see Dr. Doolittle. All right. But they'll let you know movie times. So listen to Daniel and Jared when it comes to that. All right, next one. I'll do this next one. Oh, New Day Kids Rubber Band Night, Wednesday the 22nd. We're going to be doing some really cool stuff with rubber bands. And like I said last week, I apologize ahead of time. I cannot promise you that they're not going to come home with a couple of pop marks on them because they're kids and they're rubber bands. I mean, how do you guys think this is going to go? But if you have rubber bands at home to spare, go ahead and send those because we're going to be doing really cool things. Like we'll be making giant rubber band balls and we'll be making all kinds of fun stuff with those. So, and we'll have a nice lesson to go along with that. That's on January 22nd. That's on Wednesday night, and that's from 6:30 to 7:30. Next slide.
Tacos and testimonies. Wednesday, January 22nd. Hype.
All right.
Taco
We need to
about
work on your
Jesus.
we need to work on your vamping skill. All right, like make eye contact, and if you don't want to stare at them, like look at the back wall. That's what I do because some of them
I
are.
prefer to stand behind the curtain.
Well, we can go do that. You won't be able to see the slide though. I want a taco about Jesus. Brenda, did you find that slide? Did you? You made that slide? All right. That's extra cheesy. Tacos and testimonies. Now, that's the same night that the men are supposed to be doing Wednesday night meal. And so, guys, did we just come up with an idea? Okay, good. All right. All in favor, say aye. All right, good. Tacos and testimonies. So that's on the 22nd. Next slide. Ooh, yes. Parents' night out. Those of you who are not aware of what this is and your parents, you need to be aware of what this is. So on the 25th, that's a Saturday night from 5 to 8 p.m., you can bring your kids here at the church. Pizza will be provided. They'll have games. They'll have movies. They'll have all kinds of stuff going on here. And you get to go on a date with your spouse. Now, something that I want to point out to all of you. If you have kids and they're grown and they're out of the house, or if you don't have kids yet, you can still come to this event and we won't even put you to work. We already have people to work this. You can come and go out with the couples of the people who are leaving the kids at the church. So we all can be involved in this process and going and having fun together. Does that sound like a good time? Yeah. So 5 to 8 p.m., you drop the kids off at the church. If you don't have kids or your kids are grown and out of the house, like Ray, your kids can take care of themselves, right? You can just come to the church at 5 o'clock and you guys can go to dinner with a couple of people. You go to dinner with Dave and Jen. And Jen. Bring Jen. Bring Jen. Because if you and Ray go together, it's how rumors get started. All right. Next slide.
January 29th. Hype and Kids Worship Night. You do your thing. I'm not big.
You missed a line.
Hype and Kids Worship Night. Worshiping together.
Worshiping together. So on that Wednesday night, the teens and the kids, they'll meet in here in the sanctuary, and they're going to have a big worship night that night. So they'll all be worshiping together and praying together. And I think Pastor Jared is the speaker for that first one. And so that's on January the 29th. Next. Ooh, man, these are fun. I get so excited about this time of year. All church Super Bowl party. So we used to do like 6 Super Bowl parties or 5 Super Bowl parties. Huh? Yeah, well, you don't count. But we used to do these 5 Super Bowl parties. You know why I didn't like it? Because I went to every one of them. And I never watched the game because I was kind of traveling between the games. And then your parents never got to finish the game because they have to come and pick you up at the church, and it's this whole big thing.
And we're super fun.
And yeah, that's right. And so you guys can have a youth one up in the youth room. The gym will be open for you guys to play games. We'll have the game going on in here. We'll have the game going on in the children's department. We'll have food in the kitchen. Because, if there's one thing that Nazarenes know how to do, we know how to do what? We know how to do food, yeah. I was hoping somebody would have said pray, but... You said potlucks? Yeah, that's close, I guess. We have to pray before we eat the potluck, don't we? All right. So February 2nd, 2020. Anything else? Is that it? All right. We're going to have Bible time. Bill's back this week. Everyone welcome Bill back.
Good morning, guys. Second Sunday in a new year. My goodness, already got the shortest day of the year out of the way. So now they're getting longer. I'm sure you're able to tell that by 30 seconds a day or something now. So we're headed in a good direction. Well, it's been a good week, and it's been a good Sunday. And so we're starting this series. Phyllis is teaching on prayer, and that was great this morning. Kind of syncs with the pastor's emphasis on prayer, and what a good emphasis for a brand new year. Who wants to see God move in our church and in our lives? Who wants to see prayer answered? Who wants to be more effective as a parent, as a coworker? Do you know that when we connect with the Father, all of the resources of heaven are at our disposal? He has blessings and abundance waiting for us, and Scripture says you have not because you ask not. Right. So we're talking about alignment. We're talking about persistence in prayer. And so Phyllis brought up Psalms 40. I waited patiently for the Lord. How many of you have waited and prayed for something to happen, and it didn't happen, or it hasn't happened even? And yet Scripture tells us to wait and be persistent. I want to testify to you. I saw an answer to prayer this week in my personal life that was 4 years in the making. And God came through in an awesome, unexpected, unanticipated kind of way. As I prayed over and over in these 4 years, and perhaps you've had this experience, I said, God, I need your help. And the thing he said to me over and over is, I have and I will. I have helped you in the past. I will help you in the future. And my tendency was to go, yeah, but like next week if possible. I have in the past, I will in the future. And so the value of looking back and tracing his steps when he's opened doors, when he's provided for you in ways. And he said that same pattern, I came through in an unexpected, miraculous way in the past, right? And I had to say, yeah, you did that. And he said, I'll do it again in the future. Do you believe that? Yeah, I believe that, but this next week, if possible, right? He wasn't into that. He's into his own time. Well, we celebrated my mom's life this week. Most of you know that, and what a lady of prayer. And let me give you a snippet that I shared at the funeral of God's open doors, I think, because my mom prayed. And I want you to be encouraged by this. There was a day in July in 1975 when I was trying to figure out where to go to college. I'd been to Bible school. My credits wouldn't transfer to Oklahoma State, which is where I was headed. And so I was going to lose all that year. And my mom came out one day and she said, have you thought about going to Bethany Nazarene College? I wasn't a Nazarene at that time. I didn't know much of anything about Bethany Nazarene College. But she said it's a church school. You could establish your credits, and once they accept your credits, then you could transfer to Oklahoma State or wherever you wanted to go. And so came down, signed up. I was on academic probation for a semester, a year or something, and I said, that's fine. I'll prove myself. And so I got involved with a missions group and traveling and singing and preaching and teaching and enjoyed the whole college experience. And, man, God just grew me and stretched me and put me with people of like passion. A group of friends, and out of that group came missionaries and pastors' wives, and they're all over the world today, and some here in Oklahoma City. And it was just an amazing thing how that came together when I had no clue what I was supposed to do. But my mom was praying. And after me, my brother came, did the same thing, got involved in the same group. He's now a missionary, as you know, in Singapore. My younger brother came, same group, learned to teach, learned to speak, learned to sing. practiced ministry together. He's been a churchman and deep involved in his church for all these years ever since. Power of prayer. More was accomplished, I think, by my mom in her prayer than she was in her ministry all during her life with children and music and all the good stuff she did was probably superseded by the time she spent in prayer, not just for us, but people all over the world. What a privilege. You want to pray more? You want to see God act and move in our church, in our lives? Man, I do. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about him doing things that we have not even thought of or imagined. We've got these little dreams and little plans, and God says, hey, if you'll get into what I am into, if you'll spend time with me, I'm going to blow you away with what I've got in mind. Amen. That's good stuff. Come on, guys. Let's start the second Sunday of the new year with an offering. Amen. Father, it's good to be in your house. Thank you so much for your people. Thank you for our pastor and staff. Thank you for what you've done in the past and what you promised to do in the future. We love you. We want to be in step with you. So we ask your blessing on these tithes and these offerings in Jesus' name. Amen.
Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me into his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
You know, I love this time that we get to come together and spend time in prayer. I think one thing that I fear happens sometimes, this can be a spectator moment for us. This can be a moment where somebody comes and we pray for you guys, and you guys listen to somebody pray, and we listen to a song, all the while carrying all this stuff. So I want to do something a little different today. I don't think prayer is meant to be a spectator sport. We're meant to be intimately involved in a relationship with our Father, and we get to do that anywhere and any time. But we're purposefully right now having a moment where we get to come before the King of Kings, the one who knows everything and created everything with all that we are and all the stuff that goes on. Pastor Chase and I love the opportunity to pray for you guys. And we get cards each and every week, and we pray for you. Something I've tried to, in my own life, be intentional about, and Pastor Chase has tried to be intentional about, and we've been talking about this a lot. And we talked about it with the guys on Wednesday night, about not passing up on those moments to pray. We say a lot when people go through stuff and are telling us things, I'll pray for you, right? I'll pray for you. And we love praying for you. There's nothing more I love than to pray with you. And we have an opportunity now to spend time in prayer, not just for each other, but with each other. And so I want us to do prayer time a little bit different this morning. And, maybe in your life, you need some healing to happen. I would love nothing more, or Pastor Chase as well. If you want to pray for healing in your life this morning, I'd love for you to come down to the altar. And that might be a physical healing in your life. It might be financial healing. It might be relational healing. But if you need healing of some sort, I would love to pray with you through some of those things and just lay my hands on you and pray over you, Pastor Chase as well. If you filled something out on a card a little bit ago and you're going through something, whether it's job situations, friendships and relationships, whether you're struggling with your teachers and your grades and your classes and all the things we talk about in our classes every single week, right? The highs and the lows. You get to praise God this morning for those highs. Our teenagers do this thing in Sunday school each and every week. And they talk about their highs of the week and the lows of the week. We get to praise God for those highs, don't we? And that's part of prayer. We get to pray and ask God to help us through those lows, those moments that aren't so great in our weeks. As we talked about last week, part of that prayer and actively praying is sitting and listening. And maybe this morning some of you guys need to just sit and listen. But I want us to participate in a relationship with the Heavenly Father this morning. And that takes intention. And sometimes that takes uncomfortability to walk out before people, not worrying about what they think, but knowing that you want to pray for and be prayed for. If you don't want to come down here, you can't, and you want somebody to pray for you, just slip your hand up, or I'll make it back there to you, or Bill, or somebody around you will come and pray with you. But as we go into a time of prayer, I don't want to pray for you guys. I want us to pray with each other. And that looks a little different. And so the band's going to play, and if you want to come and be prayed over, or you want someone to come and pray with you, if you want to sit there with your wife or your kids and pray with them as well, that would be awesome. And so we're just going to enter into a time of spending time praying with one another. Is that all right? Man.
One with God, the Lord Most High.
You know, the amazing thing is there isn't a song or a sermon in the world that can change the dynamic of a church or of someone's life like prayer can. You know, it's a focus point for this year. You know, every year we take focus points on certain things, and prayer obviously is always a focus point, but being able to physically pray with you is, and talking in what Jared was talking about a little bit ago, in the men's group, we're doing a four-part thing over leadership, a four-part series over leadership. And if you weren't able to be here this last Wednesday night, guys, I encourage you to come to that because as we move on, those lessons are going to be. I have found in my life the scriptures that I'm preaching from and that I'm teaching on have helped me in my life in areas of leadership that I would have never dreamed possible. And we talk about prayer a whole bunch. And this last Wednesday night, we discussed, and guys, I hope you were doing your homework assignment that I gave you. We discussed the homework assignment is not praying for your family once a day, but praying with your family once a day. That's a completely different dynamic as opposed to praying for them. Your wives and children and friends need to hear your words, need to hear you praying, and you need to hear your family praying for you. And one of my favorite parts of every single day is our Bible study that we do at night with Hudson and Olivia, and they pray for me and Abby, and they pray for Grandma and Grandpa, and they pray for Paul twice. I don't know what that means, but you get prayed for twice. I don't know if that means they know something I don't know, or they just like you more than me. I'm going to probably go with that one. But Jared, I found out since we're doing more water, I am dry all the time. So today, though, I'm going to continue in our sermon series. Now, Wanda, don't put the scripture on the screen. I accidentally gave Brenda the wrong scripture, so that was my bad. I left a 1 off. It was supposed to be James 1:19, and she had James 1:9, and that was my fault. I left off. That was my bad. I left off a 1. We were busy doing the lotion thing the other day. Brenda pulled a mom card on me and Jared the other day, and it worked, and Jared and I smelled rosy fresh and had smooth legs, so. and that's all I'm going to say about that story. So today we're going to continue in our series. I started last week, 10 Ways to Love, and this type of love is the love that you could have in your relationships with your spouse, but this is 10 ways to love, the ways that God loves us and the ways that God calls us to love each other. And so today, though, we're going to be looking in James chapter 1, verse 19, if you have your Bibles. And if your Bibles are up here on the altar, thank you very much. If you forgot, we're still doing our cell phone things, and we can lay those down up here, and you're like, well, my Bible's on there. You know, they still make these. You can go get one and bring it to church. It's a great thing. James 1, chapter 19 says, "Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must always be quick to listen and slow to..." That's what we talked about last week. So being quick to listen and slow to speak is actually something that's talked about several times in Scripture. And so here it is. It's mentioned here again. "And slow to get angry. Human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." Anger. So last week was listening instead of speaking. And today we're going to talk about speaking, but we're going to talk about speaking without accusing. And it's inevitable at some point in time in your life, you are going to get angry. You've been angry before, you're going to get angry again. I mean, it's just part of life. You get frustrated, you get upset, and especially if you're in a relationship. If you have a close friend, if you're married, I thought going into marriage that my wife was going to get mad at me a whole lot more than what she actually does, because I knew how I was, and so I don't know I have just changed over time, or if my wife is just super patient, don't answer that. Don't answer that. I'm preaching. Don't answer that. Yeah, she just gave up. Oh my goodness gracious. And so God is calling us to live out an ideal and a way of loving that almost seems impossible. It almost seems like God is asking us to listen without speaking. For some of us, that seems impossible. Like whenever you're in a situation, remember we talked about this last week, we really want to get our point across. Because if you get your point across first or you get your point across better, you win. Yeah, you win. And we all like winning, right? No one likes to lose. No one likes to lose the argument. Guys, I'm going to just go ahead and tell you right now, I've lost many arguments in my day to her. I've lost many. Who's clapping? Don't clap at that. There's like a smattering of applause happening. I have lost many arguments in my day. And I've also lost the arguments where I'm like, I lost that argument, but did I lose it or did I let her win? No, because yeah, speak without accusing. Because if you are always angry, the very first thing that you're going to do is accuse. I mean, that's what's always going to happen. If you are living with that kind of anger and bitterness inside your heart, the first step that you always take with anybody in your life, and normally it takes place with those who are closest to you, you accuse them. Your first step isn't to listen. Your first step isn't even to love. Your first step is always to accuse. So over in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, I use this passage a lot when I'm doing weddings and different things. But do you realize the love chapter of the Bible, Paul isn't even talking about a romantic kind of love when he describes this in the love chapter? You understand that? I did this at Jay and Maddie's wedding a couple of months ago. I talked about this very thing. So some of you, if you have your Bibles, turn to 1 Corinthians 13 and look with me in verse 4. It says there, and a lot of you are familiar with this these passages of Scripture. It says, love is patient and kind. It is not jealous. It is not boastful. It's not proud or rude. It does not demand on its own way. It's not irritable. It keeps no injustice or being wrong. Think about this. If you're always angry, and if you're always ready to accuse, you're always ready to keep record of wrong. And Paul is saying in this that Christian people can't keep records of wrong. Or we shouldn't keep records of wrong. Why is that? Think about this. You live your life in a way where you can remember. Now, I'm going to say something and a face is going to pop up in your brain. And if it's my face, I'm sorry. It's probably going to be my face now. Think about somebody in your life who has disappointed you or who has wronged you. You got that picture in your face or in your mind? Got that face in your mind? You got that picture? What if God lived that way? What if God, instead of forgiving you, what if God kept records of wrongs? What if God said, you know, I forgive you, but I'm never going to forget this? What if God said, you know, it's eternity for everyone except maybe these few because of what they did to my son? You know, we often think that as Christian people, we get to love the way that we identify with love and the way that we define love. We define love in a very abstract way. God actually loves in a very eternal way. Do you realize that you can't have records of wrongs and have eternity on the same? There's a huge difference between God's judgment and keeping records of wrongs. And for us as Christian people, we don't get to do either. We don't get to do either. We don't get to judge. I sure don't get to keep records of wrongs. Man, if I lived my life keeping the records of the way that people have wronged me, I would be the most miserable person on the face of the planet. Maybe, just maybe, the reason why we are so miserable at times is because maybe, just maybe, it's not what the people have done to us, it's what we hold on to. You thought of that? It's not necessarily what people do to us, it's what we hang on to. It's what we don't let go of. We have as human beings, we have a very big problem with letting go. We have things in our lives that we like to just keep in little tidy spots. How many organized people do I have in the room today? Man, some of you raised your hands way too quick. So I'm proud of you. Good. Organized people. So, but people, even unorganized people do this. We have certain sections of our lives that we keep in little boxes. We have our church section. We have our work section. We have our school section. Jimmy, you start school this week, don't you? Next week. But we have our school section. We have our friendship section. We have our family section. And what we do is we divide out all these areas of our lives and we think to ourselves, you know what? We are going to live our lives based off what's happening around us at the moment. So we'll come into a church service on Sunday morning and we decide that we're going to be in church, so we're going to be churchy today. Is that a word? It is now. So I'm going to come to church and I'm going to be churchy today. And then I'm going to go to work tomorrow and then I'm going to be worky tomorrow. Whatever that means and whatever that looks like to you. For us, it looks kind of like churchy. It's churchy and worky look a lot the same. But then you're going to say, you know what? Then I'm going to go home and be with my family. Now here's where things get really interesting. When people start to separate out these different parts of their lives, the reason people act differently in different areas of life is because we feel like we have to put on a certain face with certain places with certain people. And what happens when we do that is we end up going from one place to the other wearing these masks that by the time we get home and by the time we get to the people that we're closest to, it's kind of like shutdown mode. And that's where we start having family problems. Family problems begin when we start hanging on to all this other stuff. So you have people who wronged you, and now you have boxes that you put that in. So not only do you have places in your life where you don't get to be you, you have places, all those places, there are people there. And spoiler alert to all of you, wherever there are people, there is always going to be problems. And there's probably the potential that and if you're going to enter into a relationship with anybody or anything, the church, your spouse, your friends, your brothers, your sisters, your brothers, your sisters. And no matter what relationship you enter into, it is guaranteed that you are going to find someone who is going to let you down. There's only one person in this world that's going to be able to fulfill you completely. And it's nobody in this room. It's nobody in this room. So I talked to the guys on Wednesday nights about leadership, and with leadership comes expectation. So if your expectation when you walked in here today was to have all of your needs met and all of your needs filled, I guarantee you're going to walk away from this place extremely disappointed. Because there is nobody in this room that can fill all of your needs and all of your expectations like God can. And unfortunately, no one in here is God. Or fortunately, no one in here is God. Right? So here you have this idea where you have to act a certain way in all these different areas of your life, and then you have people wronging you, and so now you have these little separate areas where you keep your records of wrongs. And when you hold on to those things, you never get to go back to the way it was before. Man, I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody walk in to this church, and the first 6 months they're here, they're on fire. They're on fire for God, and they're on fire for what God is doing in their life, and they're on fire for the way things are going. But all it takes is one wrong word from the pastor, from a Sunday school teacher, from a friend, and then all of a sudden we hang on to that. We hang on to it, and we let it eat us up from the inside out. And we never get to look at church the same again. So let me ask you a question. Is that on the church, or is that on you? You go to work, and man, the first 6 months you're at work, you're on fire for work. You can't wait to get there every day. You're so excited about this new opportunity. You're so excited about the places it could take you. You're so excited about the people that you're working with. But then all it takes is one wrong word or one wrong look. And then things change. Then all of a sudden you just dread going in every day. You don't want to sit next to that person. You definitely don't want to have lunch with them. You feel like you're at a dead end. You feel like there's nowhere else for you to go. But let me ask you, is that on your work? Or is that on you? Because remember, if we're looking at this, if we're to keep no records of wrongs, I'm not saying, and I'm not saying that when people wrong you, you shouldn't do something about it. You do realize that difficult, hard conversations are spiritual. It's actually what the Bible tells us to do. Having difficult conversations, that's not fun. You know what's worse than that, though? Holding on to garbage that you shouldn't hold on to. Holding on garbage that will tear you up from the inside out and change your life for the worse. You can have conversations with people. Yes, they're difficult. Yes, they're hard. But it's like what we talked about last week. Remember the baseball diagram that I gave you? Every relationship is lived between the bases. Everything that takes place. And in order to round a base to go to the next, you have to break through a barrier. And you have to sometimes have hard conversations to break through that barrier to get to the next phase of your relationship. Or if you don't, you're just going to live life between home plate and first base. And I don't know how baseball works, but I don't think going from home plate to first base, going back to home plate works very well, does it? I don't think it works very well. You want to round first at some point in time, right? And nobody wants to live between first and second. You don't want to have to go, you don't want to get caught in a rundown. Right? But here's the reality is hard conversations have to happen. Because if they don't, all you do is hold things in. It makes you bitter. And more than likely, the person who has wronged you has no idea. Has no idea. And if they do, they don't care. Hello? They wouldn't have said something hurtful to you if they didn't intend to hurt you. And if they didn't intend to hurt you, they have no idea they hurt you. So you are holding on to stuff that is destroying you. In your marriages, at home, Abby and I have done this. We've done this. This isn't an unusual thing. Everybody's done this. How many of you have wronged your spouse in such a way, and then you have the audacity to go to them and say, "What's wrong?" And guys, I'm just going to tell you right now, when she she doesn't look at you, and she either continues walking or continues doing what she is doing and says, nothing, there's something wrong. My powers of observation tells me that there's something wrong with you. Ladies, if you know that maybe you have stepped over the line, Daniel has a line. We're still confused about that. But if you step over the line, if you step over that line, whatever that looks like, and you ask your husband what's wrong, and he looks at you and goes, nothing's wrong. I don't want to talk about it. I've done that, right? Or I don't look at you. I do the girl thing. Nothing. I don't want to talk about it. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. I say things so many different ways, I don't even know what that means. Ladies, don't look at your husband and say, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. Some of us say things so many different ways, I don't even know what that looks like. I don't even know how did I say it? Like, there have been occasions, now, I'm going to get real with my family here in just a few minutes, but like, don't be mad. There have been, don't go, it's okay. There have been occasions in our lives where sometimes nothing really is wrong. Sometimes I am just quiet, and that is weird, right? Yes, that is weird. And she thinks that there is only two reasons for me to be wrong. It's either because there's something wrong, or to be quiet. It's either because there's something wrong or because I'm hungry. But sometimes I deal with a lot of people on a daily basis. Sometimes I just like to be quiet. And everybody said, whoa, yeah, I know. And sometimes I just like to be quiet. Well, there'll be times where she'll say, hey, do you want this for dinner? And I'll go, I don't care. I'm good with whatever. And she'll get frustrated with me because I'm not helping her make that decision. And it's not what I said, it's how I said it. And so I have looked at her before and I have said, do I need to do jumping jacks when I say that? Do I need to do cartwheels? Like, how do I express to you? Who wants to see me do a cartwheel? I would pull every muscle in my body if I did a cartwheel. Do it. But that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. And a lot of what happens in a lot of cases in our relationships with each other, small, tiny things just like that. I'm bringing that up because that is not even a huge thing. But small, tiny things just like that can eat away at us for days and weeks and months on end. And then you're mad at each other. And then when you start to take inventory on why you're mad at each other, you can't even remember why you're mad. How irritating is that? You have friends in your life where you've been mad at them for 2.5 years. I don't even know why you would consider them friends, but you've been mad at them for 2.5 years. And when you come and you sit down and you talk to somebody about it and you say, well, what got this started? And you look and you start to do the inventory and you say, I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, how sick and twisted is that? We are harboring such bitter feelings toward each other sometimes that we keep records of wrongs and that we forget that love is supposed to be patient and kind, understanding and not boastful and proud. It's not out. It doesn't insist on its own way. It looks for the ways of other people. It's not about coming to this place meeting your needs. It's coming to this place looking to meet the needs of others. I told you earlier, if you walked into this place looking for all your needs to be met, you're going to leave here disappointed. If you walked in here today looking to meet the needs of somebody around you, I guarantee you God will meet your needs and then some. You will leave this place so fulfilled for what God did for you through someone else, not through me. I told you right when I got up here to start preaching, there is not a sermon or a song in the world that can do what prayer can do. There is not a sermon or a song in the world that can do what love can do. when you truly walk into this place to meet the needs of those around you, your needs will be met 100 times over. The greatest gift that God would ever give anybody is his Son. And his Son was the sacrifice. You realize that? When we're talking about internalizing things and keeping records of wrongs, you are internalizing your life. You're keeping everything in here. When God is telling you to let it out, God is telling you to let it out. Let it go. You cannot be fulfilled without sacrifice. It's a guaranteed fact. If you come looking to take and take and take and take and never give, you will never receive God's true blessings. If you come willing to give of yourself to God and to everyone, God will give abundantly. Not because he doesn't give the other way. He does. You just won't see it. He will give abundantly. You'll see exactly what's going on. Not because it's happening in your life, because it's happening in the lives of the people around you. You know what the amazing thing about God is? You know what? His biggest miracle today, people will say that God does not. Jim, how many times have you heard people say God doesn't perform miracles today? It happens, right? You hear people say it all the time. You know what one of the biggest miracles God performs every single day? God performs a miracle in your life every single day. He gives you the ability to breathe. He gives you the ability to breathe. If you don't think that's a miracle, come ask me. I'll kick you in the stomach, and we'll see how big of a miracle you think it is. It's a big miracle to be able to breathe. You know another big miracle that God does every single day? He wakes us up. Start saying things. Another big miracle that God does every day. Sunrise. Another big miracle that God does every day. He gives you food. Thank you, Ben. Another big miracle that God does every day.
Right there with us. Getting to see my 7-year-old daughter every morning.
7-year-old daughter every morning. What was that?
He's right there with us.
He's right there with us. Miracles that God performs every day. Rest. What? Walk. Protection. Miracles that God does every day. Children being born.
My spouse is still with me.
Hallelujah. John, you married way above your head, and so did I. Miracles happening every day. Love. Miracles happening in your life every day. Go. Hope.
I don't have a car wreck on the way to work.
Hello? Coley? Healing. No matter what kind. Physical, emotional, spiritual. Hey, you want to hear something crazy? You guys are going to think I'm crazy. You know what a miracle is? No, okay. You know what a miracle is? A miracle is what you just did. You acknowledge something. 6 weeks ago, on Thanksgiving Sunday, it was like pulling teeth, having people stand up to give one thing that you were thankful about for this year. 6 weeks later, there's probably about 20 of you just now realizing that God performs miracles every day. That's a miracle. You know why we see it? Because we're in tune with the Spirit. We have faith that God is there. And we're not holding on to things that we shouldn't hold on to. If you couldn't think of something, maybe you're holding on to something that you shouldn't hold on to. Maybe it's time to do the inventory where you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, why am I doing this? And you get to finally say, I have no earthly idea. Because when you get to that place, that's when you can look at God and go, okay, I'm done with that. I'm done with that. Let's move on. I'm ready to do other things. Now, here's the biggest trip in the world. And I think it's just the most amazing thing. I'll never forget it. I was 24. Abby and I had just gotten married, and we started visiting around at churches, and we started looking at places to go. And I remember we had a checklist of things that we wanted in a church. And we were even thinking about our kids who weren't here yet. But we had this checklist and things that we wanted in a church in order for us to go to that church. But I'll never forget, our first Sunday over at Lake Overholser, Pastor Doug was over there, and he started talking about something very similar to this idea. And he actually said the words, if you walked into this place hoping that it's going to meet every one of your needs, you are going to be sorely disappointed. And I thought, this isn't a good start. But you know what? He finished that by saying, if you come to this place looking to meet the needs of others, God will supply everything you need. If you come to this place looking to meet the needs of others, and now I say that, and here's the caveat that goes with it. If you're going to meet the needs of others, you have to be here. You can't be there for people when you're not there. Sunday school, Wednesday nights, man, those things are so much fun. I think to myself, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to be here for that. This was awesome. Things in life change when the power of prayer is believed in. Right, Bill? Me and Bill and Jerry were just talking for a few seconds down here. And I was telling Bill, you know what I learned from Bill this week? I learned from Bill this week, no matter how old I get, I'll never be able to get away from my mom and dad's prayers. No matter how old I get, I'm never going to be able to get away from my grandpa's prayers. My grandma's been in heaven since 2011, and no matter how old I get, Bill said it, there's no expiration date on that. Those prayers that my grandma prayed for me until I was 30 still happen. God still answers. I believe it. Praying for David. Mario and Shelley, we're praying for you. College students, praying for you. This church can do better than that, though. We're going to pray with you. We're going to pray with you. Would you stand this morning? Heavenly Father, we love you, Lord. We thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to come before you in prayer. We are thankful for the opportunity to come to this place, not to meet the needs of our own, but to look for the opportunities of meeting the needs of those around us. And Father, as we leave this place, let us treat the rest of the world the same way. When we go into our places of work, to our schools, when we go to work out at our gyms, and when we go to the grocery store, Father, I pray that we would be seeking to find the opportunity to meet the needs of those around us. Because, Father, it's what you call us to do, and it's what you do for us. Help us, Father, to be a people wanting to bring as many people to heaven with us as we can. We love you, Lord. And all God's people said, Amen. Amen. You are dismissed. I love you guys. Go in his peace.